Hi there, Linda from Let's Talk Prepping, and warning bells are going off all over, from warm banks in UK to medical passports to projected blackouts in the dead of winter in the United States to riots because of inflation, rent inflation, food inflation. So let's look at all of these things. And as we're looking at them, what I want you to do is determine how you can protect yourself and your family. Now is the time when you are really warned that this is going to happen. How are you going to protect yourself? We're over here at none other than the World Economic Forum, weforum.org. What are warm banks and why are so many opening in the UK? And basically, warm banks are just places where people can go to get warm this winter when they don't have any heat. And they go through here and they give you a map of where all the warm banks are going to be. And it's just something to think about, because you think it's just going to happen in the UK. What about the United States when people can't afford heat? Or there's no electric and rolling blackouts. And if we go over here to msn.com, warm bank, a worrying winter necessity. And they say warm heated public spaces are not sustainable solution to the cost of living crisis. I guess if they're all saying that even though it's a new normal and cafes and churches and libraries are opening up in the UK. So we have the warm banks over in the UK. And then we have in the US, here's naturalnews.com, nearly 25% of Americans are facing a risk of power blackouts this winter, thanks to the administration's anti-fossil fuel policies. And I know my electric company has already said that we're probably going to have blackouts this winter, and there'll be rolling blackouts, and it'll be during the coldest part of the winter when they can't get the energy, the natural gas, to produce electricity. So what I want you to do is think about it. If you live in the Northeast, especially of the United States, or even in the UK, is there anything you can do now to prepare for this? If we just have rolling blackouts, and there may be 3 hours at a time, maybe you can get by with very little. But if for some reason they last longer than 3 hours in the dead of winter, it's going to be very cold in your home. So think about what you can do now. And when the rolling blackouts come to me this winter, I will definitely give you an update on how long they last, how often they're going to be, how cold it gets, what I'm doing to correct it, what I'm doing to help myself. Now, if we go over here to Natural News, new WHO pandemic treaty in final stages would overrule the U.S. Constitution and unleash medical dictatorship. And they give you a link here, and you can download the PDF, which is the treaty, the whole treaty. And I did look at it, it's quite long. And if Biden signs this treaty, what China did to its own people during the lockdowns will soon be coming to America. And Biden reportedly intends on signing this treaty as quickly as possible. And it's all about power and control and profits, and putting the WHO in charge. And then they summarize what's in this treaty. And again, you can download the PDF, how it's a power grab. And it recognizes the WHO as the one who will be in charge, directing and coordinating authority in global health. And they're going to support speeding up the process by which emergency drugs and vaccines are approved. And they'd set up something similar to the Ministry of Truth that would tackle misleading, misinformation, or disinformation. So this is something we have to worry about when unelected people are put in charge of our health and everything that goes along with it. Very important to think about that and how it will affect you, because we're going to have bureaucrats deciding health. You know, they'll probably say no vitamins, no herbs, no naturopaths, no holistic information allowed. They're already trying to get rid of all of that now. And then if we go over to lc.org, Liberty Council, world leaders agree to implement vaccine passports. And the G20 summit, they signed a declaration which states they agree to adopt passports to facilitate all international travel. And if you go down here a little bit, you'll see that Dr. Naomi Wolf, an author and Rhodes Scholar, predicted that the passport would eventually track every aspect of people's lives and would violate the U.S. Constitution, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and HIPAA. She said, "I cannot say this forcefully enough. This is literally the end of human liberty in the West if this plan unfolds as planned. Passports sound like a fine thing if you don't know what platforms can do. I'm a CEO of a tech company. I understand what this platform does. It's not about the vaccine. It's not about the virus. It's about data. And once it rolls out, you don't have a choice about being part of the system. What people have to understand is that any other functionality can be loaded onto the platform with no problem at all." And Massachusetts Institute of Technology says any change can quickly become normal if people accept it. The new normal will be that we are used to the idea that in some cases being able to move around freely is dependent on us to being able to show that we're healthy. There will be a greater acceptance, I think, of that kind of public health monitoring. And the Liberty Council says that the digital health passports, along with tracking and tracing apps, presents a serious threat to freedom. It's all about collecting data and control. And it's being promoted worldwide to limit a person's ability to leave home, work, shop, dine, travel, attend a public event, or even worship. So what can you do to avoid that? Because you know what's going to happen. Many, many people, probably the majority, will go along with it because it'll be more convenient. They won't have to worry, can I get into the store? Can I grocery shop? Can I fly? Can I work? And they'll just go along with it. Whereas if we had enough people that protested it, we might be able to stop it. But eventually, it's going to happen. You can bet on it. So if that happens, what are you going to do? How are you going to survive? Maybe we'll have to order everything online. Maybe, you're not going to be allowed to go out of your house. Maybe you can go to some small stores, but not the larger stores. I don't know. It's going to be a disaster if it ever goes through. And this is the second news.com. G20 pushes vaccine passports for all future international travel, and they want to accept it using the WHO standards. So we have this. And then if we go over here, the dollar's days are numbered. China stockpiling gold while the BRICS allied nations bypass using the greenback in trade and will cost America the world reserve status. This is really important, and this is getting closer than you would think. It says every time a deal is done using the BRICS system or other payment systems created by other countries, it weakens the U.S. dollar. And China's stockpiling gold, and the rumor is that they're going to be, the BRICS will be producing a currency based on gold and commodities. And nations would go for that. And this is the purchasing power of a dollar, down 96% from 1913 to 2020. And you can see just the difference. It was worth $1 back then. Now it's almost down to zero, less than 10 cents here. Amazing. So the weaker America and the U.S. dollar becomes throughout the international community, the closer America becomes to losing the world reserve currency status. So we have our dollar again just collapsing, and this is from allnewspipeline.com. And another allnewspipeline.com, Americans are not prepared for the unrest and riots dead ahead, with countless U.S. households headed towards homelessness and starvation. And, of course, lack of heat, because they can't afford it, or they're rolling blackouts. It's long worn that only 9 meals separate a civilized society from tonal anarchy. Unlike all other commodities, food is the one essential that can't be postponed. If there's a shortage of shoes, we can make do for months or even years. A shortage of gasoline would be worse, but we could survive it by walking, mass transport. But food is different. If there's an interruption in the supply of food, fear would set in immediately. And that's the thing. Even if for some reason it was just a short-term stoppage or shortage of food, fear would set in. And we've had a rise in the cost of living, and here are some foods that have gone up in price. I've mentioned those before. So as millions of Americans have been forced to make changes to how they shop, therefore how they eat, with heartbreaking stories of those that can no longer afford to even eat 3 meals a day, or having to decrease their portion sizes, many of those that have not had to make these changes yet will be forced to in the near future. The rise in food and energy prices over the last year has led some Americans to change their eating habits, buying less meat and switching to cheaper grocery stores, as well as cutting back on eating out. Cash-strapped families are increasingly searching for discounts and deals, including buying near-expired food that's marked down in price. So once this happens, you know there are going to be unrest and riots, and we're getting closer and closer to this, just as time goes by. So I want you to think about all this. What can you do to prepare? Well, maybe you could stock up a little bit on some food now. Beans and rice aren't that expensive. So maybe you could stock up a little bit with beans and rice. Maybe you could go to the food bank and get something now while there still is a food bank and they still have food. Maybe you could go to the church. A lot of church basements have food. Think about it. What can you do to prepare? What to prevent starving and freezing in the near future? So let me know in the comments how you are preparing, how you think you're going to fare, how bad you think things are going to get. Are they going to get bad, or maybe they're just, maybe this is just scaremongering. Maybe nothing's going to happen. Maybe everything's going to be the same as it always has. But if you have even the slightest hint that any of this is going to happen, I think you should start preparing and doing something, whatever it is you feel comfortable doing. So let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.